Okay, today, hey, you might be surprised, I want to talk about making HTML5 work with Firefox OS. The problem that we have with HTML5 is right now that we are in a hype. When a certain food company from California went up on stage and said that HTML5 is the future and that Flash is dead, everybody said, yay, HTML5, and the press came up with the most outrageous headlines what HTML5 can do. It actually told us that nothing we needed to do in the past with closed technology is necessary anymore. Everything works with HTML5. Every technology goes through that. This is how marketing works. You get a new technology, then you promise the moon and the stars that are possible with that technology, and then people start playing with it and realize actually it's not working. That's why there's this disillusionment coming in. And this is where we are right now. A lot of people are starting to bash against HTML5 and say like, oh, there's lots of problems with it, it's not the same on every browser. Well, guess what? The web is not the same on every browser. It has been like that from the very beginning. But I'm actually happy that we're beyond the hype. I'm happy that the hype is over because I'm, in my capacity as a spokesperson of HTML5, always had to talk to the press and they came up to me and say like, so everything works on iPhone, right? I'm like, yeah, everything would work if Apple would allow us to do that, then it would be great, but it's not really, that's not working, but the web can do this and that and that. So we have this main comparison between native performance and HTML5 performance one-on-one. And that was the big problem that I saw. That was that hype. We just had to sell HTML5 rather than explain HTML5. And now that we're getting into the disillusionment, the good idea is that we can actually start working with it. And this is when that slope of enlightenment starts, when people realize, actually, it's not really perfect, it's not really bad, it's something we can use to build stuff with. And then you get into the productivity. And that's why we hope we're going really quickly right now, rather than like, ooh, HTML5, everything is perfect. And there's great things about HTML5 that are not in other platforms. It's the promotion from HTML to an application platform. HTML was meant for documents. It was meant for universities to send one document to another with a click on a blue link, a blue text with an underline. Everything else was illegal. It had to be a blue text with an underline. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to know that this links to something else. And then HTML became like not good enough for what we wanted to do. We didn't have any sliders, we didn't have any combo boxes, we didn't have anything to store something on the user's computer rather than cookies, which were just evil from the very beginning and just terrible, except for the golden cookies that just got stolen in Germany. I loved that story, it was awesome. It basically meant that everybody who builds HTML things and understands HTML can go into application development. And that's 10 million people out there, more than any of the native platforms have. So that's why HTML is a great opportunity. It's also worldwide availability without waiting for the hardware. Everybody's allowed to be on the web. You can have a Windows 95 box with a really old browser. You're still allowed on the web, and you can get things on the web. Most of it would look awful and actually would be very slow, but still you could read Wikipedia, you could send emails. Everybody is allowed on the web. Whereas when I get, for example, newest features on Android Jelly Bean, I have to wait until I can afford the newest Jelly Bean phone, because the old Android phones don't allow for the upgrade of that one. The web can actually work everywhere and is not tied to the hardware and limited by the hardware, which everything else is. It gives us a flexibility. We can give different environments to different devices and different platforms. And Internet Explorer 6 shouldn't have animations because it's far too slow for that by now. It doesn't need animations. Animations make things prettier, make things easier to use, make things more engaging. But if you slow down everything else because you support one old browser, that's not the right way of doing it. Test what the environment can do and give them the right interface accordingly. And that's only on the web that we have this opportunity. Anywhere else, we have to repackage the app and make it a light version and a beautiful version and an extra version and have it in the market 3 times. It's just not the same. It's a simple development environment. You just start writing. That's the other thing. It's like whenever I talk about HTML5 to people who come from native development, they're like, so what IDE do I need to buy? None. You can actually use TextMate if you want. You can go to the command line, type in VI and start editing, or Emacs, or whatever other editor you want. I personally use my Sublime Text for everything. That's all you need. You want to start an HTML document, all you have to do is do this. Did that one? Done. I got my HTML document. I can save that, put them on a server. I can say hello world. that's the environment that we're working in. Everybody is invited to start playing with it. And that's the wonderful thing about it. It's a mixture of programming and being part of a medium. And it's a simple deployment. Just put it on a server and you're done. You don't need to put it into another marketplace. You need to package it up. You have to get it scrutinized. You have to put it on a special server. Almost every server out there has HTTP. Even IIS is possible if you want to. You can put it on Dropbox and put your HTML there. That works. And that's just a wonderful thing of the web. Of course, there's always some things that go wrong. Some people just like to see the world burn and do things like that. And some things that are always like stopping us from doing what we want. And there's a few out there. The first one is actually man-made. The one-size-fits-all approach that we promise on the web is there. One size, one code base can support all the different devices that you see here. What the mistake that we make is that we try to give the same interface and the same experience to all these devices. So if people tell me that they can't use HTML5 because Internet Explorer 6 can't do the things that HTML5 gives us, you're using it wrong. Yes, you can use HTML in Internet Explorer 6. You just give the rest, the HTML5 on top of that to other browsers. You build for the future. You don't build for the past. And we're stuck with that. And that actually comes in design as well. When people still use pixel-perfect designs or pixel sizes as designs, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. The best example was the iPad mini. We have responsive design, which is cool. Like we resize everything and everything works according to different platforms. And then the iPad comes out and everybody says, okay, 1024 pixels is the resolution of the iPad. So let's fix it to that. And then the iPad mini comes out, which is 4 inches smaller, but still 1024 pixels. So when you actually define your 1024, they get shrunk down on the iPad mini. So the responsive design is not possible between the iPad mini and the iPad if you use pixel sizes. So embrace the squishiness, as people say. Embrace that you don't have any control over the interface. Allow things to float left and right. Allow percentages. Allow people to resize fonts when they need to. Then you can actually build HTML5 things. Now, times change, of course, and we've been working on our desktops and we're proud of our laptops all the time. But when you see, like, this is 2009, the inauguration of Obama in 2013. So in 2009, everybody was still attentive and listened to what was going on. 2013, everybody's playing Angry Birds or whatever on their phones. So the phone revolution is there. The mobile revolution is there. We have to think about mobile phones. We really do. And the issue with it is, of course, that mobile development is not as easy as web development, especially as you have different mobiles. And when we thought 4 browsers and 2 different screen resolutions is bad enough, on phones we have to think about much more. But it is a perfect thing. It is the HYPNOPHONE. Everybody has a phone and plays with it in the Western world. And it's great because we can communicate with other people without having to talk to each other, right? So you don't have the whole like ugly, I can touch you, that's really bad. I just want to talk to my friends somewhere in the world on Imgur or Reddit instead. But the sales are there, the money is there right now, and it will collapse on itself, I'm quite sure. There will be not the same market for iPhones and Androids in 2 years' time because people will get bored of it. Also, parents would give their old Androids and their old iPhones to their kids. So we cannot say like, oh, a new iPhone comes out, that's the new technology platform that everybody has. There's still a massive market of like old hardware that we will have to deal with in the next few years. And it's especially annoying when an operating system is wired to a hardware and is wired to a browser that cannot be upgraded anymore. So the old Android stock browser, which does awful things to HTML5, will be with us for a few years now. So in essence, the thing that holds HTML5 back is actually the hardware stopping the software from accessing all the cool things in a phone. Phones have great cameras, phones have accelerometer, phones have vibration alarms, phones have battery limiters, all these kind of cool things that you want to play with, but you can't get access through it on native platforms. So you have to go through something like PhoneGap to convert your HTML5 into something else. And in PhoneGap then it runs in a web view, which doesn't have the same performance as a browser on the mobile phone. So we're limited in every which way that we want to do. We can actually optimize the browser and the JVM until the cows come home, but if we don't get access to them through an HTML5 app in a native platform, we have a problem. So as we're on Mozilla, we thought we have to liberate the phone. We liberated the desktop. Without Mozilla, there would be only Internet Explorers in offices. I'm quite sure the web as we know right now, like Wikipedia and those things, would not have happened if we hadn't stood up and said, like, hang on, that web should be open. And people should get the choice to use what they're actually surfing on. It should be their choice not to use a Windows operating system, but something else instead. The other problem that we have is that the native app platforms have conditioned people differently. When we went on the web, we're totally happy to go to a website and download some software. We're totally fine to actually find some software via Twitter that friends of ours say is like, oh, look, download that, this is pretty cool. But end users go to a supermarket. They go to a shop and actually go to a marketplace to get their apps. They pay in there, they stay in there, they get their reviews in there. They don't even look at the web anymore. Which is interesting, because to me it's a step back in time. Because I remember twocows.com, I remember download.com, I remember freshmeat.net, all these websites that listed software to install on your desktop. And the reviews were there, and the only way to find them was going to these websites. All of these websites are now malls that are just falling apart. There's nothing in there anymore. It's just spammers playing in there. And I think closed app markets will have the same dilemma sooner or later. The other issue that HTML5 did is that we simulate, we mimic what other people are doing. We just build things that look like native interfaces, and then we're surprised when people get confused when they don't perform like native interfaces. My favorite is when people use JavaScript libraries that use an iOS interface or look like an iOS interface, and then I open it up on my Android, and I'm like, yeah, I wanted 2 back buttons that do different things. That's really, really good interface. I really want that. Just because it's a mobile browser doesn't mean it's an iPhone. So don't simulate that. This was during the Prohibition in America when people made their own illegal alcohol, and they actually put this under their shoes so that their footprints looked like cows, so the police couldn't find them. And we do the same thing. We simulate something and we don't give the real experience. The big thing, of course, a few months ago was when Mark Zuckerberg was talking to somebody who supposedly does something about tech, and he interviewed him about what Facebook has done wrong and what's going on there. And the big quote was, I think the biggest mistake that we made as a company was betting too much on HTML5 as opposed to native because it just wasn't there. And that was the big quote that everybody put in the headlines. That afterwards he actually said that they actually have more people on a daily basis using mobile web Facebook than iOS and Android together is what they failed to mention. So the success of the web is much bigger than the native platforms. They also failed to mention that Zuckerberg said that the whole problem was that they built their own system called FaceWeb, which was actually not performing fast enough. And the cool thing about that one is if you annoy HTML5 guys enough, then they will come up with something to prove you wrong. And SENCHA did this. SENCHA just created something called FASTBOOK, which is an HTML5 application that runs, that has Facebook content in it, and it's actually faster than the native app. It doesn't have the same loading screens. It doesn't have the scrolling is the same responsiveness. So they showed that it can be done if you just embrace HTML5 rather than just try to roll into it or mimic it as the FaceWeb thing did as well. This one works on WebKit only at the moment, but luckily enough, there's people like me who complain about this on Twitter. So I did this, and then SENCHA invited me, and last time I went to California, I sat down with them, and we're fixing it now to work on Firefox and other browsers as well. And SENCHA Touch is going to be available for Firefox OS as one of the libraries to build things with. So the good thing is you can complain to people, or you can sit down and work with them. So what HTML5 really needs is an app platform, a flagship platform, one platform where HTML5 is the language to use, or is the environment stack to use, that gives you full access to the hardware, that doesn't show you in a web view that is actually not performing, that really gives you the access that you want. And this is what Firefox OS is. This is what Firefox OS looks like in an old version. We've got phones here. You can play with them later on as well. You can see what it is. And what Firefox OS is we liberated the hardware. We give you full access to the hardware from JavaScript. So we looked at all the things that are in a phone nowadays. Telephony, multi-touch, SMS, geolocation, battery API, web vibration, which used to be called a vibrator API, but there were so many stupid jokes about this, so we stopped calling it that. Contacts, full screen, settings API. So all of these things are available as JavaScript APIs, and into the core of the phone. The core of the phone is a Linux core, the same one that is under Android, and then on top of that we got Firefox and the drivers, and that's all there is. There's no Java, there's no Cocoa, there's no C#, there's no other language that you need to learn. You build the operating system itself in HTML5 and all the apps in it in HTML5. And that's why we can actually have a great performance on very low spec phones. So an old phone with Android Honeycomb on it, downloading new apps into it is not going to make you happy. But running an HTML5 app on a phone with Firefox OS with the same specification will be totally fine. This is actually live, so on arwemobileyet.com it links to Bugzilla. So once we fix WebUSB and WebNFC as well, these will become green as well. We will add more in the future. And if there's red dots and you want to fix them, please do that with us. All of this is open source. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is tada source like other systems are, where basically like, oh, look, there's a new version out, and 4 weeks later you get the code. You get the code up front, and you will see what's in the next version, and you have a say of saying what should be in the next version as well. So developer tools are the most important thing to get you started. We don't want you to build Firefox OS. We want you to build apps for Firefox OS, or apps for the web that run on Firefox OS. And the good thing about HTML5 is that your browser, the tool that your end users are consuming your product in, is also your development environment. So I don't need an extra IDE that has a view in there that simulates what's going on. I see exactly in the browser what's happening. So instead of having to being very far removed from the experience of our end users, you have the experience immediately in there as well. And there's wonderful little things that you can do with that, like the responsive view in the browser, for example, gets you almost 90% of the way there. So if you take an app, for example, this was an app that somebody built, and you do the tools, web developer, responsive view, then you can actually see how it will be on a 340 pixel phone rather than on the big screen. And you can rotate it as well and see if your interface works that way. So you can reload then the page as well to see if it fixes itself automatically to lay out there. This was done with Enyo, so it used to be a WebOS app, and now it's actually just ported to Firefox OS. But he used the emulator for most of the settings there and getting there. So that's the cool thing. The browser is my tool and my end user's communication tool. I don't have this separation that I have in other platforms. We also have building blocks in the browser for you. So we have a few libraries called Firefox OS Stub, Mortar, Web Components, and Xtag. Web Components and Xtag are actually, Web Components is a standard proposal, and Xtag is a library to make the standards proposal work. So instead of having to write your own, for example, tab box or toggler boxes, you can actually use that markup and use it in there together with the Xtags library. This looks alien. This looks like, why do you do this? This is like Dojo widgets or something like that. But the difference is that instead of generating a lot of divs and JavaScript, CSS, and these kind of things to make it work, this is actually using the engine of the browser under the hood. So all of these widgets will perform much, much faster than any of the simulated widgets in the past. On the back of that, we got the Shadow DOM. That's where it came from. If you put a video in the browser, you get a play button and a volume control and all these things. If you ever wondered what that is, it's not Flash, so what can it be? It's just plain HTML. But you don't see it in the browser. You don't see it when you do a view source. But you can actually see it in developer tools when you actually do a view source there. You see what the browser generated for you. So what Xtags allows you to do, or Web Components allow you to do, is tie into the browser and build interface systems that way. For your apps, all you have to do is use that kind of markup to have really nice responsive interfaces. And Mortar and FXOS Stub, all of them on GitHub, and Paul is going to show them as well, are actually using those. So if you want to start doing that, the best thing to do is start with a simulator. I mean, you can do it in the browser to 90%, but then sooner or later you want to see what the install looks like, what the installing process looks like. And this is what it looks like right now. I go to the web developer, Firefox OS Simulator. Then I can see my apps here that I have on my hard drive. So I just put a folder in there with like weather compare manifest. And once I have that in there, I can just put it in the simulator. I can start the simulator, and then I will see my Firefox OS here. And next to it, I got my error console telling me all the things that went wrong with Firefox OS. And I can use Firefox OS without having my hands on the phone which is not that quickly anyways, and it doesn't make sense that every developer needs to have a phone. So you can try it out to like 90% there. Of course, if you got a game or something like that, in the end you want to have a phone to test it on to see what the performance and the touch interfaces look like. But this one would get you in terms of like your interface as far as you can on your desktop, and then you just shift it over to the phone or install it on the phone from the web. Where are we? We are here. And the good thing is all of it works on Android. So if you write an HTML app now for Firefox OS using any of these systems that I showed you, and you have an Android phone with Firefox on it, these apps will run on your Android phone as well. So you don't need people to have a Firefox phone. You can use immediately your Android phone. Issue is that most Android phones will have a higher resolution than the first Firefox OS phones will have and will be much faster. So it gives you a good impression of your app that might actually be a bad impression for the real system. But just for getting it out there and getting people excited about it, it's not really, it's a great opportunity because you don't build for one platform, you build for the web, and you build for Android now as well. And it means that you will get a good browser on Android. And of course, we said it before, people want marketplaces. People don't want the web. They want to go somewhere where there's all the apps. That's why we're working on a marketplace like anybody else. The difference is that the marketplace that we have has an API behind it, a JavaScript API. So from your app, I can have an install button that goes through the market. From the web, I can have an install button that goes through the market. So your web app for HTML, your HTML5 app for Firefox OS could be a normal website. You could be dpa.de, where I was yesterday, and just have an install button there that links to a manifest file, and the same page that you have already on the web advertises for your app, rather than having to go through an app market and compete again for a totally new market. Because, yeah, right now, trying to get your app found in an app market, good luck. You can call it exclamation mark AAA, so at least when people list alphabetically, you will know your app is the first one. But that's about it. Otherwise, you have to fight the 12,000 angry birds, angry pigs, angry cows, whatever people build. And another interesting step that Firefox OS is doing is the search functionality what we have right now. As our apps are HTML5, they are on the web. They can be hosted on the web from your server, not an issue. But they also are searchable that way. So instead of having to go through a market and find an app, we have a search functionality that says, for example, I'm looking for New York Yankees here, which is some sport Americans do. And it automatically found all these sports apps from all the different providers that actually have things about New York Yankees in them. I can then click that, install that app, use it. When the game is over, discard the app. I didn't have to go through the process of saying like, buy this app, please enter your credentials, please give us your credit card details, although it's a free app. All these kind of things fall away because we can just find and install and uninstall apps from the web, much like we can visit websites. And that to me is a massive step that we haven't taken yet. The other interesting thing about that one is that the whole, what you see here, social, games, local, and so on, all these collections are done automatically for you as well. So all the apps that you install on your phone get automatically structured for you that way. You know, all these folders that we put on our Android phones and put our apps in right now, they happen automatically because we index the apps themselves. We know what the app is about because there's a description in the code itself and not somewhere on a marketplace disconnected from the app itself. So this is what, to me, is like what Google meant for the web. When Yahoo came out, it was a directory. They had people that surfed the web, put meta tags on things and actually put them in a structure. So to find New York Yankees, you would have to go like Yahoo, sports, teams, baseball, New York Yankees. You had like 7 clicks before you went to that website. What Google said was like, that's stupid. This is code. We can index that stuff. Why doesn't the search page just, you have a search box that says like New York Yankees, it says like, oh, it's probably that website that you want. So going from a directory of websites to a full web search is exactly the same that we're doing here. And that is only possible with HTML5 because no market would allow you to index all these apps or get a metadata API or something like that. So to promote your app and get it found, all you have to do is put it on the web. And that's a very, very big step into the future, I think. So the time is now and the place is here. You can start playing with that. And we want you today to start playing with that and to think about it and have an open mind about it. And stop thinking in terms of like, oh, the web can only do these things because a browser in the past only allowed us to do that. You can give them something. You don't have to give them everything. Stop thinking that like HTML5 needs to be the same as native. Everything that works on native works on the web. I tweeted about it yesterday, asking people, what is an app that does things on the web that a native app cannot do? This is what we need. These are things that I want to see. Simulating native apps in HTML5 gets us nowhere. It just gets us bad reputation because it will never be as performant as the platform locks us out, except for Firefox OS, of course. Simulating them makes no sense, but actually putting things in there that the web can do that others can't. Why? Why oh why? When there is a new level of Angry Birds, do I have to download a whole new 23 meg of app? Why can't I just load that level? On the web, I can easily do that. Like WebSocket communication, live communication between different users, totally fine on the web, totally fine in HTML5, impossible in native apps. So think about the fringe cases that native apps don't cover that make it interesting. Why does the app have to be the same on a desktop than on my mobile phone? Why can't I have a role-playing game on my desktop, and on the phone I just get my results and my next quest? So I can actually have a double experience. I can play the thing at home, I can take my mobile phone with me, keep answering, keep doing things, go back home, play my game again. But we try to do the same on both platforms instead of realizing that the power of the web is connectivity and software talking to each other. And if you've done it already, if you've done HTML5 apps already, go further, do new things, look at the platform that we have, look at those new APIs that we give you, the vibration API, the accelerometer API, camera taking. Do the things that you never could do in other platforms that you can now do with JavaScript immediately. And think out of the box as well, like vibration API. I'm like, why the hell would I use a vibration API? What is it good for except for alarms? But think about a map application, for example. I use my map application and I say navigation. Okay, in London I cycle around a lot, I've got my phone in and it tells me go left, go right, because you shouldn't be on your bicycle holding your phone. Not a good idea. But why do I even need that sound? Why don't I just set my map application to vibrate twice to take a left or vibrate once to take a right? Can be done, it's very possible. And now you can do it with JavaScript. Think about these kind of things, how you can use these APIs. Battery API, people are like, why do you need a battery API? What's that good for? And normally it's just telling the user, you're like, oh, you got 5% of battery left, please do something about it. Why isn't your app clever enough to say, like, if the battery is down to 10%, I turn off animations. I make the thing less smooth, but I actually make sure and say, like, okay, you're down on battery levels, I made the interface easier so you can actually work longer. Or I automatically start storing things every few seconds or I pull data in the background every 5 seconds rather than every 50 milliseconds. So the battery API is there for you to know what the system can do, not just to tell people the obvious because they got an icon already for that. And that's all I have for now, so thank you very much.